year, a federal appeals court upheld a Texas law that bars social media companies from blocking users for their viewpoints. So that law allows Texans and the Attorney General to sue large social media companies like Facebook and Twitter for removing posts or blocking users based on their opinions. Now, in that ruling, the judges wrote they reject the idea that corporations have a freewheeling First Amendment right to censor what people actually say.
I am here. I'm a glowing white orb. I'm a white orb that when I speak, there's a gray circle that around. All right, so
Michael has transcended into the orb.
I am now a non-physical entity. I am around you and surrounding the sound
sorry,
of my voice.
Ben, I cannot do that.
All right, so if you can bear with me, I'm going to have you just vamp here. I'm going to have you vamp. I have to literally jump out and unplug my computer and come back in because my camera is glitching today. So, so all of you watching, if you want to see my lovely face, you're going to have to bear with just Ben for a few moments here. All right. So you ready?
Yeah. Ready.
All right. I'm out. I'll be back.
Okay. Well, good morning, everyone. Yeah. So my face isn't that pretty. I don't know what he's saying, but point is, this episode is all about the amazing victory that was won by the Fifth Circuit Federal Court, I believe, Court of Appeals. Basically, you remember that Texas lawsuit? You know, my great, lovely Lone Star State. That lawsuit where they challenged big tech directly, and they said, "Big tech, you cannot just censor anyone just because they don't agree with your political views." Okay. Well, that took a while to get to where we're at, but basically, a federal court judge in the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals, I believe, basically approved it and said, "Yo, guess what, buddy? If your private social media company, like Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, if it has more than, 50 million subscribers or something like that, it's no longer considered just a private company. It's considered a utility. Bingo. That's the key thing. Okay?
It's huge.
So they can't just scream, private company, private company. No. See, TXU cannot cut off your electricity if they don't like your public opinion. Right? AT&T cannot stop having me as a customer if they don't like what I'm saying. No, buddy. You're not considered a private utility, a public utility.
Can I chime in here now that I'm back and you can see me?
Yes, you are no longer transcendent. You are now just Michael.
Just me, just the ordinary old me. And I have to take issue with Jacqueline here. Jacqueline, just Ben is all right with me. Hello?
Oh man. Good morning.
I'm stepping out. I'm going to step out. Just kidding. But she made up for it with kind of a grand entrance today, Michael. Yeah. Just drawing attention to myself. That's all. It's all about me. I just want to be the center of attention. No, it was very interesting. So I had a glitch. Anyway, so I'm glad this is our topic today because it stood out to me. I'm glad, the news cycle, there's just so much stuff that comes through the news cycle. And I just have to thank God and YouTube. Because God uses YouTube. I mean, God is in control of all things, and the people that I listen to, the people that I follow, my news sources cover some of the most important topics, and I'm glad I'm able to catch them. And this is one that stood out to me: the Fifth Circuit. So, in your understanding of how many are there? 9, 10, 12? How many circuit? In California, it's the Ninth Circuit. How many? These are just below the Supreme Court, right? It's the Supreme Court, and then below the Supreme Court is this group of regions that.
Right. So
Nevada,
I understand
California. Go ahead.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah, the way I understand it, you have the Supreme Court, right? But then you have all the federal courts sprinkled throughout the country. And those federal courts still have the same level of national authority. So, like the federal court judge in Florida that ruled mask mandates on airplanes unconstitutional, that applied to the whole country because it was, even though she was in Florida, it was a federal court.
Got it.
And so
But
yeah,
how many are there? So that there's like a first,
I
second,
don't know.
third, fourth, fifth. It goes up. I know in the West there's the Ninth Circuit. I think it covers like California, Nevada, Oregon, Washington,
Mhm.
maybe. I don't know. But so those are federal courts, and when they rule, so that answers a question I had because I do a Friday show with Doug TenNapel and Quentin from Out of the
Oh yeah.
Darkness, and we were talking about that, and I brought this up in our conversation. I brought up that the Fifth Circuit ruled that any platform, any big tech platform that has 50 million plus users, subscribers, etc., are now considered, or by this ruling, a public utility. And Doug goes, well, that's fine for Texas, and I'm like, it'll go to the Supreme Court, but I wasn't sure. You clarified it's like there are federal
No, that's for
courts
everyone.
when they rule it's for everyone. It doesn't have to go to the
Right.
Supreme Court. It'll probably end up in the Supreme Court, but it doesn't have to. It is the law of the land. I mean, is that what you're saying? It's like it is official.
Again, the same thing applies to what was decided earlier this year or last year, where that Florida federal court judge ruled that the mask mandates were unconstitutional. Once that happened, immediately, no more masks required on airplanes or airports.
Right.
So the same thing applies, from my understanding.
And so, I mean, it takes and I think this is right. I mean, I think it's the way it should be, but it takes sorry, I'm trying to say something and Mom's answering a question. There are 12 circuit courts. That's what I thought. I thought there were 12. So, Mom,
Okay.
12 circuit court regions in the USA. So the United States is broken up into 12 regions. And so there's a first circuit all the way to 12th. So it takes a while for the courts to catch up with culture, right? When
Right.
culture is advancing at one rate, like big tech, this stuff that we're experiencing right now. Rewind 20
Mhm.
years ago, you can't even imagine where we are now, right? You rewind 50 years ago, right? So we're living in an era with technology that's never been before. And so like the rules and the laws of the land, well, rewind back to Ma Bell. Remember, there was one phone company, right? That way back, there was
Mhm.
one phone company nationwide, and it was a monopoly. And
Right.
because it was in a monopoly, it could abuse its power or whatever. It could, at a whim, raise your phone bill or whatever. And that's what monopoly power is. And
Right.
so I don't know the court cases or whatever that happened that broke up Ma Bell into, I don't know, 5 or 6 or 7 different companies, that broke it up. So that was the court catching up with technology when phones were the new technology. When the phone system was a
Mhm.
brand new technology, that was the courts catching up. Okay, monopoly power in this technology is not good. And here we are with a similar thing. It's these big tech companies that are multinational, like they're global corporations, but how do we regulate them in the United States, right? They were
Right.
founded here, but and that's the crazy thing is like there are countries that do not allow all the nonsense that the United States allows on the tech platforms. Like India is censoring
Mhm.
Facebook, unlike the United States, but we're catching up, right? I think this is that move in the right direction to where I do believe all this crazy deleting and censoring is going to be a thing of the past, at least on the technology platforms. I think we will be able to say whatever we want on YouTube
Mhm.
in the not too distant future, where there will be class action lawsuits now coming. That's what happens when a ruling happens, like this kind of ruling happens, and then there's all those people that were affected by it previously, like, oh, okay, well, let's see if they're abiding by this law, and if not, now we have a case, right? Now we can
Right.
sue, and it'll be class
Right.
action, and class action is the ones they don't want, because those are the big expenditures, right? I just heard a case. I don't remember the details of the case, but the original ruling was this defendant wins $7 billion. Right? A defendant was single. There's a single defendant, not even a class action. It was some single defendant was due $7 billion, and then the judge said, it's too much. We'll just make it $1 billion. It's like, okay, we're dealing in numbers that are unimaginable not too long ago.
Yeah.
But are you in agreement? Do you think, the censorship is on its way out?
Well, what's funny about that is if you go back to when YouTube first started, like I remember that. And I remember it was the Wild West. You could put whatever you want. No one really cared. You could find almost anything. But then over time, certain things were said, okay, listen, we can't show this for FCC reasons. We can't show these things because it's already established in the law. You can't show this because it's illegal. Okay, that's fine. You already have the agency called the FCC for that reason. But then, over time, it went beyond what was already said illegal. Then it went into the realm of what I just don't like to hear. Then it gets into the dangerous realm of misinformation and all that crap. Because then you take away the freedom of speech. If you say only these things can be talked about, you automatically violate the First Amendment. This is not about things that are blatantly illegal. These are differing opinions. And when you start regulating that virtual town square, you get dangerously close to the Soviet Union. You do the exact same thing that the Soviets did. And on my channel, I've called out SovietTube. I've called them out. And I said, you are using exactly what Solzhenitsyn said was used in the Soviet Union. If you read their policies, it legit says you can't talk about these things.
Well, thank you for correcting yourself. You corrected yourself right there in one statement. You said we're dangerously close to the Soviet. It's like, no, we are fully within what Soviet has been doing, right? The Soviets were doing. We are within it. Like it is top-down regulation and opinion censoring, right?
And so you mentioned other countries. Well, that's equally important because when your private company like YouTube gets so big that it impacts global citizens, well, then you have to worry about other countries' Bill of Rights. And you'd be surprised. A lot of countries have the word censorship in their rights. Like you cannot censor anyone. That is in Japan's constitution. That's in Russia's constitution. That's in Ethiopia's constitution. If you actually read the constitution, this makes it very clear. Censorship will be prohibited. Okay. But it's not in our constitution. That word censorship is nowhere in our constitution. And I can assume that was probably what these big tech companies used as their workaround. But now that this ruling has made it very clear, once you hit that certain number of subscribers, you're not considered a public utility. And then it's different.
I'm curious about this. So, first of all, what's the name of the judge? I missed the very beginning video. I don't know if it said anything about the name of the judge or anything. But this judge,
in Dr. Steve Turley's video, I think he mentioned it, but I forgot the name.
Well, hero. But question, I wonder how this number was reached, right? 50 million. Like, I guess it's got to be kind of arbitrary. It's like, well, they're huge. What's the cutoff, right? So if you have 49,999,999, it's like, let's just delete some of our subscribers so we don't have to cross that threshold and become a public utility. But it's a good threshold because it's talking about the mega, right? How many Facebook users are there? Right, we're in the billions, right? And YouTube users, subscribers. So I think that it's a pretty good line. It's a pretty big number. I don't have to worry about becoming a public utility for quite some time with whatever I'm building, right? When I get to 50 million. But here's the thing. Because of the news cycle and so many crazy stories going on out there, people miss this. People miss a lot of people completely miss the important things. I think this is a kind of a seismic event in big tech, right? What are the heads of Google thinking now?
It is huge because what that tells every person that's been shadow banned, that's been silenced, that's been kicked off completely, what that tells them is that, hey, guess what? Your voice your fits of confusion and frustration are being heard. Your battle was not silent. Okay. And so I don't know. It just one of the biggest issues I've seen, and since being a new person on this platform, is that you may not get silenced or banned, but you'll get shadow banned. And to me, that's even more pernicious because big tech is basically stopping the flow of your information getting out there. Not because it's illegal, but because they didn't like it. But now that no longer applies. And so when it goes to Supreme Court, they'll either do two things. So either listen to it or they won't listen to it. If they don't listen to it, then it stands. If they do listen to it, I would love to hear what the arguments are going to be.
Man, I want to say a bunch of things. First of all, thank you, Mom. Again, Bonnie Creighton here is Miracle Mom, and she's our fact checker. I'll find out the name. Thank you. It's Judge Andrew Oldham of the Fifth Circuit. So, hero of the week, hero of the year, hero of the decade, hero of the millennium, Andrew Oldham. And then I want to go in another direction, but I have to respond to Angus McNaughton. What an amazing name,
Nice.
Angus McNaughton. That is a handle. If that's
Sounds
a real
like
name,
from Scotland.
Your family, your parents gave you a handle that is something to live up to. That is just an amazing name, Angus. Doug TeNapel is alive. Does he have a channel? Okay, let me tell you. Let me do the Doug TeNapel plug here. So, poor Doug TeNapel is saddened by his reckless behavior and YouTube. And it's appropriate, right? We're talking about getting banned and canceled. And I'm telling him he'll be back on YouTube because of this Fifth Circuit ruling. I think he will be back to YouTube. So Doug has been, in fact, and Angus, for your information, we've had him on a couple of our, I've had him on as a guest a couple of times on my YouTube channel and This Way Network. And we got a message from YouTube saying, this is a courtesy notification that you're not allowed to have people who've been deleted. I mean, I'm paraphrasing, but you're not allowed to have people who've been deleted from the platform on your own. And so we had to remove our Doug TeNapel stuff. But we still have him here and there. His face is covered by a big smiley face. If you go through the list, you'll see a few videos where their smiley face is Doug. We've tested it with Quentin from Out of the Darkness, and he's okay. So we're showing his face. But Doug and Quentin and I have been doing a show. I put it on Rumble. It's called Doug Q Michael on Rumble, but it's on This Way Network on Rumble once a week, every Friday. And we just recorded it and it'll be posted there sometime today. So Angus, you and anybody else who wants to see Doug's face and hear his take on things, he's amazing. So Doug and Quentin and I once a week. So you can go to This Way Network on Rumble. But when you type in This Way, and I just found this out, I think on Rumble it's okay. You can have the space in between This Way or not. So This Way Network on Rumble, you'll find a bunch of content, mostly Doug Q Michael for now. But on YouTube, if you're looking, you're already here at This Way Network if you're watching this. But on YouTube, you have to take the space out. If you didn't know where the link was and you were searching, just putting in This Way, type in This Way without a space and you'll find us. All right. So there's the commercial for Doug. Now, what was I going to talk about? I had some direction I wanted to go.
Well, you were mentioning how some people will be able to come back on this platform.
The public utility side of this, it's in international corporations have to cater to the laws in the countries, right? The laws in the countries where they want to operate. For example, Facebook, Google in China, which is the billion plus, population, right? That's that number of users, because when you're a tech platform, it's not about who can necessarily pay you. It's about how many eyes you get, right? The eyes, the viewers you have are a commodity in and of itself. Advertisers see that, and you just have value. You don't have to get money from those viewers. You just have to have the viewers, and that's the draw of China. Well, if you're gonna exist in China, there's a whole different set of rules over there. There's a whole bunch of stuff you
Yeah.
can't talk about over there. And so these big tech platforms. Oh, here's what I was thinking about. Like, so just in the same way that it takes time for our legal system to catch up with technology, then there's a lag between laws being passed and those tech companies paying attention and reconfiguring and changing their own protocols to abide by the law. And so I
Right.
wonder that I really do, when this thing was passed, the person that's in charge of paying attention to that, right? Their legal team, right? Google has the highest paid lawyers, right? And Facebook have the highest paid lawyers, and they must have to get together and figure out, are we going to respond to this or not? We're liable. Lawyers, they're
Yeah.
like, oh man, we're liable now. There's a new law that we're liable, and they have to be on top of it. So let's just talk about YouTube. They are constantly updating their policies, right? It's every now and then there's a new word you can't say, right? There's just a new word you can't write, you can't say. It's like they're
Well,
monitoring
right.
the language. And it's like, how do you
Right.
keep up with that? Which word, which is a normal English word outside of YouTube that you can look up in the dictionary and not get banned for? But I put up a video on Sweet Home Maricopa this past week, and I used the word fraud, FRAUD, in the title. And it was this, and it was the lawsuit against Trump and his kids, right? I was just reporting on New York Attorney General Letitia James suing Trump
Mhm.
and family, and it was a fraud suit. They're suing Trump for fraud, and I just titled it that way, and my video got not demonetized but limited monetization, right? So there's a difference behind the scenes where you're fully monetized or limited monetization, and it's
Yeah.
because of that word. And it's like, I can't use an English word now. I can't write it. I can't say it. It's like, what on earth? So these lawyers have a lot of work cut out for them trying to figure this stuff out.
Well, sure. But the thing is, now with this ruling, I'm curious to see how people go after the Soviet too. If they try to keep pulling this garbage again, from my understanding, you have the legal right to say, guess what? You can't do that. There's nothing in this that is illegal. But what you're doing, which is silencing me saying a word, you can't do that. So, yeah. As of now, you as an American citizen have every right to take legal action against any type of platform that silences you because you're saying a word they don't like. I don't know. We'll see what happens.
Well, I think certainly in the midterms and when we take over the House and Senate in January, right? The House and Senate, because Dr. Steve Turley had a pollster on. It was like an hour-long conversation with, like, one of the top pollsters. The guy called the Glenn Youngkin Virginia race down to the wire. He knew what was going to happen. He had the percentages and the ratios and the different regions in that state. Like and so he had this pollster on, and that guy says, we're taking the Senate and the House. He says it's possible. It's not inevitable, but it's possible the Republicans will set a record in the House for most seats, because there's a threshold. The 247 is the most Republican congressman ever. 247 is is the highest number of Republicans ever, and we may break that. We'll definitely get to 240. We may even get to 250 or something. But he says in the Senate we'll at least be at 52, 48, possibly 53, possibly 54. And so when that happens, there's the changing of the guard. A lot of good things start happening. And then in 2024, we'll take back the White House and probably have all three branches of government. Well, both houses and the executive. We already have the judiciary, right? The judiciary is always already on our side. But these things, these laws that are being passed now, will be further enforced and I guess regulated or monitored, so that those who are breaching them or offending them in the class action lawsuits, it's like, it seems like this gradual I hate to give Obama credit, but he used this term. What is it? The arc of history bends toward justice. Isn't that it's a quote that he was plagiarizing from
It's
someone else,
ironic,
but
isn't it?
it is ironic. The arc of
It's
history
ironic
bends toward justice, and
because
that's what this is.
the left can use that as their rallying cry to social justice, right? But then at the same time, we are seeing that happening right now for the justice of the American citizen, for every American's right to say what they want to say. This is the point. Is this is supposed to be beyond politics? This is supposed to be beyond whether you're a Republican,
Yeah,
Democrat. Doesn't matter. Everyone has the same right according to the law, which is the right to freedom of speech. And so, and that's why I've kept saying repeatedly on my channel and on this platform. It's just like the past, I'd say 2 years, more and more Americans are moving away from previously defined party lines. Now it's just the American people versus tyranny, versus the establishment. So yeah, I love where I'm at right now in life. I love it.
yeah, it's exciting. I mean, it's frustrating to see the damage being done to the greatest nation on God's green earth. To quote one of my favorite radio hosts. I don't know if you know who Michael Medved is. So he used to have a radio show. He still does, but they replaced him on my local. But he used to always say, the greatest nation on God's green earth, the United States of America, irrefutably the greatest nation ever in history. And we see the damage being done by leftist Soviet-style authoritarianism. But it's a brief window, I believe, of their destructive reign, right? It's like everybody feels something very, very strange happened in 2020. And then on January 20th or 21st, when the official changing of the guard happened, you can look at statistics across the board of all of these statistics shifting, like, oh, let's cancel oil. Boom, the cost of living goes up immediately. Let's do this, let's do that, and all these shifts, and they try and blame the previous administration. The things they put into place are now taking effect, and that's why it's feeling this way. It's lie upon lie. And it's like, how can all of these things, you look at the statistic, how can all of these things at that moment suddenly change? It's because of the changing of the guard, and it's all in their lap, right? They own all of this devastation and destruction. And so,
and the American people realize that.
And American people see it blatantly. You can't hide it. And so when it shifts back, right, when the good guys get the reins again, what was surprising to a lot of people and to me is how effective Trump was, even within all of the scrutiny and all of the bogus investigations, right? He was pressured by these investigations. He was still incredibly effective, more effective than anybody ever expected. For example, this one I always like to repeat is one of the things they instituted was, for every new law or every new regulation that is proposed, you have to delete or cancel 2 old regulations, right? You don't just keep adding these regulations. You got to clean out the system. You got to propose a new one. You got to find at least 2 to remove. And it ended up being the ratio, instead of for every 1 new one to every 2 old ones, it was 1 to 23. They were cleaning out old, obsolete regulations for every new one. And that was something that we're still feeling the effects of. So things like that, where Trump did things that nobody even expected, nobody could have predicted, and it was effective, and the economy was prosperous as a result. It's going to be that multiplied this next time, right? Because now there won't be the bogus investigations. There won't be the stuff holding him back. It's like, he put more judges in place than any the previous 4 administrations combined, et cetera, et cetera. We're running out of time, man. This is fun, Ben. I love you, man.
I love these. Yeah, this is fantastic.
Final words before we sign off for the week.
Yeah, this just goes back to the power of the states. We are the United States of America, not just America. Okay? And the fact that one state can have leadership that goes to the federal circuit court and say, hey, this is not good. And that federal circuit court in a state can make a ruling that applies to the whole nation that just goes back to the power of the states. No matter how
Hallelujah.
much. Yeah, absolutely.
God is in control. All right. See you all next Friday.